And actually what you want as a franchisee is to be from any background, to be able to say, right, here's the playbook, off you go.
What gave you that feeling? What made you leave a successful business and then, take on a completely new challenge?
I've always been of the mindset that you've got to let something good go to get something great. But from a care provision point of view, I felt I can help curve the industry into and mold it into where we want it to go.
That's a big ambition and a big challenge to take on, right? So
I'm ready.
So, Amrit Dhaliwal, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Great. Yeah, thank you for inviting me on, Ed.
No, it's been a real pleasure, and I've been following your journey recently and seen you've been to Nashville. I think it was the Emerging Franchisor Conference, was it? How was it?
I mean, it was really phenomenal. It was put on by the International Franchise Association, and they have the Emerging Franchisor Conference, which happened now, and they've got the annual convention, which is happening in February in Vegas. And so I went along to Nashville, and it was a wonderful learning experience. Music aside, it was I got a new flavor for country music, and it was just a really great franchise community. So I'm really pleased to have gone there, and it really broadened my horizons as to my plan for 2023 as well. So
yeah, and I've now got you to thank for my my interest in country music as well. After seeing you post, and you give me a few recommendations just in case the listener hasn't seen those posts. But yeah, thank you for that. Anyway, thank you. Let's jump into the questions then, and the first question I have for you is the same question I have for everybody, and that is, I'd love to find out, what was your first job?
I mean, one of the earliest memories I have is I was probably about 4 years old and putting things in a carrier bag while my mum's on the till at our retail shop. And so that was probably my first job, not official. And so, I've been sort of, part of a family business from the get-go. But my first structured job was as a barman in a French restaurant in Kingston while I was at university, nice. Which was great fun. It was heaving, and I can pour an emergency glass of wine for anyone that needs one. So
fantastic. And I really respect the people that work in bars and restaurants in London, because they just look flat out all the time. It must be such an exhausting job.
It was super intense, though it did get me thinking about restaurants as a business. And one of my first businesses was actually an Italian restaurant, in fact.
Ah, cool. Excellent. I'm going to sort of dive into that in a second, but I just want to kind of share with you a story from my past that you've reminded me of, actually, when you're talking about starting at 4 years old. There's actually a picture of me in an off license cleaning the bottles on the shelf. I never thought of it as my first job. Sorry?
Cleaning the bottles or polishing them off?
That's what I'll be doing nowadays, yeah. But back then it was just cleaning the bottles, and I think I was there in my nappy with my shirt untucked and all that sort of stuff. So thank you for bringing up that memory for me. It's good. But your career then, so you say obviously started within the hospitality sector, and then you moved into an Italian restaurant. So talk me through how you got into that role and kind of the things you learned and experienced in that position.
It was really interesting, actually. I left university. I read economics and history, and as with everyone, sort of left university very energized, thinking, well, what's next? And I started working as a headhunter in IT testing. Did that for about 8 months and realized that I was totally unemployable. And I was able to get some funding together and bought this running concern in Richmond, London, as an Italian deli, and sort of got in there, knowing nothing about Italian food and not really understanding things about management and so on. So it was a bit of a sharp learning curve, and I got in, educated myself on business and cash flow and all of the rest of it, and learned a bit of Italian, mainly the bad words, so I knew when to leave the chef alone. And I built that up, was able to get some local business awards, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
And I then got involved in a Italian tea room, and it was quite fun. It was around the corner from my restaurant, and I was able to make that into a very sort of Marie Antoinette sort of look and feel. And it was it won some awards by the Chamber of Commerce. I sold that, invested the proceeds back into my restaurant, but just found that I was working all the time. As a restaurateur, and I was very hands-on, as I am with my current business. But it was the actual times were very, antisocial, and I was just there the whole time, and living and breathing the whole thing. And interestingly, I then was on a date with my now wife, then girlfriend, and I said to her, what should I do next? What do you think? And she said, well, have you thought about domiciliary care? And my wife's a dentist, and she was very 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I was very 5 to 9, and weekends. And in my mind, I was thinking I want to propose to her, but she'd be bonkers to say yes because I'm never around. And when she said domiciliary care, I thought, what on earth is that? I'd never come across it. And she sort of explained, and I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And interestingly, at the time, I had my grandfather that was staying with us from India, and we were, providing that home care throughout the family, and it was quite tricky in thinking about, well, who else could we trust to come in to the home, and all these things were happening at the same time. Next thing I knew, I was out speaking to all of the franchisors around the country, and met with someone that I gelled with and bought a franchise. But immediately having bought that franchise, I realized what my path was. And it wasn't to be a home care provider as such. It was to be a franchisor. I felt I had loads to give. I looked at the home care franchising market and I thought, well, it hasn't really changed in the last 20 years in the UK. And I can do a lot to bring that forward, make it sort of paperless, incorporate tech and data and so on, and really think about what is a service that we're providing as a franchisor to our franchisees. And so I went on this journey, built my business up, sold it, started my franchising business a few years ago, and it's just been... It's a lot of work, but it's been just the most rewarding time. I feel like everything I've done over the last 10 years has brought me here. So
awesome. Well, that's a lot there. You've gone through your whole career in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. I want to dig into a couple of bits of it. First of all, an Italian deli. What does an Italian deli have?
Well,
sorry, not the Italian deli. An Italian tea room. What's an Italian tea room? Yeah.
Well, there was too much Italian going on there. It was actually just a tea room, but hey, the Italian chefs were making the pastries, so we've got a couple of spin-offs there. I think. Unfortunately, it was nothing like the Goodfellas and the long scene and snapping out tables, but which was what I signed up for. But hey.
Oh, fair enough. Well, yeah. So when I heard you say Italian tea room, I did think, wow, I wonder what's involved there. Like,
well, we did have some Italian afternoon teas, with little tiramisus and all cool. that. But yeah.
Oh, wicked. So so I wanted to ask then. Why did your partner, your other half at the time, or she still is, sorry, why did she suggest domiciliary care? What was it about that sector?
I think she sort of knew a lot about me, of course, and thought that I would be good at the leadership part. And she understood the business her family's been in care for the last 30 years, for example. So, and so she understands care, and she thought, well, okay, I care, first off. I was very sort of hands-on and involved with my grandfather, but at the same time I understand business, and also I understand sales because of my recruitment background, which actually for a short stint really stuck with me. And she thought that, quite shrewdly, I think, looking back at it now, she thought that, if you put all of that together, this could be a really good management business for you. And here we are today, basically.
Yeah, you've got a lot to thank her for, then, really.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully she won't be listening to this, so I don't want to give her too much credit. But
excellent. So you say you went and just started looking at some franchise brands. how much were you aware of the franchising industry at that point, and how did you find all these brands?
It was really, I'm very kind of, right, here's the idea, we're going to run with it. And so, that afternoon I left our favorite cafe in Amersham and off I went, just Googling Homecare franchising and just came up with all of the portal sites and so on. And this is back in 2012 now, the beginning of, and so it was one of the portal sites. I basically contacted everybody, or certainly all of the sort of top 5 or 6 brands out there, met with them all. I didn't really know anything about franchising, quite frankly, outside of McDonald's.
Yeah.
Didn't know really any franchisees per se. And I think my education of franchising was frankly just going out and speaking to people and trying to understand, well, what is it that you offer and how are you going to help me succeed? Which also really helps me now thinking, well, I understand the mindset there. And actually what you want as a franchisee is to be from any background, be it Italian restaurants or a stockbroker, and be able to say, right, here's the playbook, off you go, and if it's not that, then we as a franchisor have more work to do. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because I spoke to one of your franchisees, Greg Renk, the other day, and I think one of the things he highlighted was the fact that it's such a highly regulated industry that it could have taken him 18 months, 2 years to actually build that business on his own. Yep. Whereas with a franchise, he was kind of up and running a lot quicker, maybe within 6 months really to get that accreditation. So did you have that as a concern at that point in time? Had you thought about that at all? Or were you, just plowing into it and seeing what happens?
No, I mean, we, me and my team really spent a lot of time building that. I mean, I understood both from the franchisee side that it's franchisee and franchisor side. From the franchisee perspective, they need to get to their first pound quickly because until then they are spending money, and so and as a franchisor, I take that very seriously because cash flow is such that once it's gone, well, that's it, it's over, and so cash is really the lifeblood of the business at that stage. So getting them trading quickly is really quite key. Also, as a franchisor, our driver is MSF, and therefore, in order to get the franchisee generating initially is obviously an important factor as well. So it's very nice that we're all looking at it from the same point of view. I had a structure in terms of registration. And it was very much about, all right, okay, as soon as, before we've even signed agreements and we're in that process, let's put some adverts out, let's speak to some recruitment consultants and so on, and let's really start looking at registered managers so we can get them registered quickly, because there is a 12-week process actually from submitting an application to CQC to actually getting an interview. And so really you want to be moving very quickly along that. And you reuse that time appropriately. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense, and I think that's when that franchisor model really comes into play, because as a franchisor, I'm going to have a guess. You can confirm or deny, but I'm guessing you've got some of the collateral ready to go to make that process smoother, quicker. You know what the CQC are looking for, right?
Well, we assist and coach, of course, Ed.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, I got that wrong. I'm kind of learning as we go along as well. But you've got the experience of having done it before.
Absolutely, and we, we're doing this all the time. We have a compliance team led by Amanda Keeler on our team, and she's wonderful. Just really kind of gets in there, gets to know the franchisees, understands where their pressure points are. We have someone that used to be an inspector with the CQC on that team as well. So Kerry Huggett on our side, and so there's a lot of people there, just immediately, even from the compliance side, putting aside the operational people that we've got that are second to none, and some of the industry leaders in terms of franchising and home care.
Cool. So I want to go back just a little bit again now, just to you're a franchisee for a different brand. Was your business successful at that point in time?
Yes, I mean, I was very fortunate that I have always been interested in mentorship and reading lots of books around business and so on. I mean, one of the thing that spun it off was I was about 11 years old, and my dad gave me this book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind, and it really just opened my eyes up to a whole world of movement, I suppose. And sort of looking at reading and learning. So I had a lot of that there. But then what I did in my early years, or as a franchisee, is that I got a lot of external coaching and support from business mentors, both in care, outside of care, and so on. And I was able to build my business quite successfully from £0 to £1 million in revenue in relatively short space of time, at sensible net profits and so on. And so I was then able to resell that, and it made it a sort of tradable asset, as well as being able to provide something that was quite crucial. One of the things that I took the initiative on was that I said in my branch we provided a minimum 1 hour care calls, because there was a lot of conversation at the time of carers being pressured into 15-minute calls and so on, and so I sort of went completely the other way and said, well, okay, actually we're going to help increase retention by recruiting people that are calm, that can deal with that loneliness issue that we've got with elderly people as well, by just being able to spend the time.
Yeah, I can see how that's really important, and probably a major factor in creating that success. But why sell at that point? And I know you said you felt like you wanted to be a franchisor, or that actually you were a franchisor. But what gave you that feeling? What made you leave a successful business and then take on a completely new challenge?
Tell you, it's very scary. When you're in a position when you're sort of working 3 days a week and able to travel all the time and all that kind of thing, and there's enough coming in, it's a very scary thing to say, well, actually, let's go on to the next thing. But I've always been of the mindset that you've got to let something good go to get something great, firstly, and secondly, it was always there for me. I just knew I had so much more to give. I loved helping the other franchisees within the network that I was in. They would come to me, and I would, loved working with the franchisor. And I also just felt like there was so much to do with ethical franchising, and you and I have spoken about this previously, Ed, about how in the UK franchising as a industry is moving at pace right now, and maybe isn't where it wants to be, but absolutely we've got all the right people in the industry thinking about the right stuff. And so I really feel like from an ethical franchising point of view, I had a lot to give, but also from a care provision point of view, I felt I can help curve the industry into and mold it into what where we want it to go, essentially. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
yeah, I guess so. I guess you it sounds like you wanted to have a little bit more impact maybe on the industry, because I guess if you're a franchisee, okay, you've got your territory, your local community, your local area, and I know for a lot of people that's a really big factor, right? They want to support that local community. But it feels like to me you actually wanted more of a national, potentially, international kind of impact, which is that's a big ambition and a big challenge to take on, right? So,
I'm ready.
Excellent. So I'd love to know a bit more about your day-to-day role now then, and how you're having that impact.
Yeah. I think, my role has been very interesting. It's changed a lot, even over the last 12 months. Hell, even over the last 6 or 7 months, I was wearing lots of different hats. Whereas actually, I've always understood that the way that you can make positive impact and scale is by having all of the right people in the right place. And so I've worked very hard over the course of this month to recruit some of the best people in the industry. We have on our operations team, we have Julie Farrer and Richard Stanfield, and so they work with the franchisees to build quality businesses alongside the compliance team that I mentioned earlier. And then we've got a marketing function and PR function, so on. So my job really has gone from doing a lot of the things to now more strategic brand building work, and also just ensuring that we are going in the right direction, and very much around learning. I'm a big believer in 1% change every day, and that 1% change makes us 37 times better every year. And so it's a lot of action a lot of the time. I'm very active. I'm out meeting franchisees, doing events, putting on the workshops, and learning myself, as well as hopefully teaching and working in that coaching environment. So very much my role has moved more into management and the brand itself from actually the day-to-day operations.
Fantastic. And you mentioned the brand there. So I'm wondering, from your point of view, what sets Walfinch apart from its competitors?
That's a wonderful question, Ed. I think there's a lot of different things. I think there's quite a lot of the home care industry is not privately owned from the franchising side. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that it adds a different flavor when it is. And I think, I'm very much involved in the lifeblood of Walfinch. And I think, my franchisees pick up with me anytime they want, and it's an open door policy, and we're very much a team. I think our team itself is a huge differentiator for the size that we are and the stage that we're at. We have heavily invested in our team. We, have excellent people. I mean, there's probably 150 years worth of experience in care and franchising within our team. And what that means really, outside of the fact that, it's a lot, because wonderful, what cool, but what does that mean? But for an incoming franchisee or one of our team right now, it means that we've got a wealth of knowledge, and there's always somebody that understands or has lived something that they're going through, and that can help push past any roadblocks and get them from zero to that first pound, from that first pound to $1 million, and so on. And I think it really breaks our horizons. I mean, I think most businesses have a glass ceiling. By investing in the team that we've got, we've really increased that height significantly. And the other thing is, I would say, is a huge learning culture. I've had to invest a lot of time, effort, money going out to the IFA event in the US recently, but I've come back with a huge level of learning, and I am, me and my team is very open to change and think, well, okay, great. How do we make it better for the franchisee? We've got three customers, essentially. We've got, the franchisees, the end service users and carers, the people that we provide service to, and also our franchising team itself, and so it's always about, well, those three parties, how do we help their journey, and how do we ensure that they are happy and have that longevity with us? And I think that these values and the ethic there is the key thing that sets us apart from everybody else. That success-driven culture.
I think it's great, and I really like that the constantly learning piece. I think that's so important, because if you sit still, and don't evolve as a business, you're not going anywhere. And the thing I particularly like about that in franchising is that the franchisees don't necessarily have to worry about that when the franchisor is doing it for them. So I think that's really good that you've got that as a focus. I was actually expecting you to say because we're a brand that cares, which I have to say I've spoken to a lot of care companies, and they all say that. I think that's number one on the list, right? You have to care about the end users of your service.
And that's at the heart of everything that we do. And I think, but we can't be the best care provider if we're not doing the rest of it, if we don't have the right culture, if we're not learning. I think, the reason that we are doing what we're doing is because we care about not only our end service user, but also our care staff. I think those two things are at the heart of every single thing that we do. If we can't improve the sort of quality of their day-to-day life, then we're not doing our job right. Is frankly the way I see it. But
makes sense. I think it's really good. I'm not trying to catch you out there at all. I think it's a given, right? That's what you should do as a care company. It shouldn't be a second thing. But you've actually highlighted the differentiators there, which I think are really interesting and important. So the market is another question I had for you, because I hear it a lot, and people have been saying to me quite a bit, especially in the franchising sector, that domiciliary care is massive at the moment in the care industry. And much like you, I hadn't heard of it until I found the franchising world. So why is it becoming more popular nowadays, do you think? And have you got any sort of stats and figures around kind of the growth or the growth potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at the moment, there was a recent report done saying that it's over, care itself is over an £80 billion a year industry in the UK, and obviously that's got different components to it. But and looking at our aging population, we're in one of the few industries that you can hand on heart say over the next 25 years the market is only going to grow. There's obvious issues around that, and it's a supply side issue in terms of care staff. But I think, having businesses that are looking at it from a different angle and thinking, okay, well, what can we do to kind of retain our staff? So we spend so much time on retention and trying to plug that gap, because if you can be the best employer and ensure that nobody ever wants to leave you, well, you need to recruit less staff, and it becomes less of an issue. I think that one of the reasons that Homecare itself is really getting a lot more press in terms of franchising is that there's a handful of very serious players in it. There's some really serious investors in Homecare. You've got sort of more structured investment happening with private equity firms and banks and so on, but also from the point of view that when we've just gone through a time like COVID, we've got a lot of positive press, with mainstream media as well, because I think people for the first time have really seen the plight of the carer, and when everyone else was safe and at home, it was a carer that went out, and they were frontline out there and just carrying on, not knowing whether this is going to pass or not, forgetting about their own safety. They were out there sort of providing that service for older people that may not have anybody else. So I think, it's really helped professionalize care within itself. And I think for me, that's one of my drivers, about professionalizing care and carers. Because I think what they do is, I couldn't do what they do, frankly, so I've got a huge level of respect for our caring community. There's probably about 1.5 million carers in the UK. That was Neil Eastwood said that at an event that I was at recently, and I thought, well, that's an interesting number. And you think, my goodness, that is a huge number of just selfless people, because they're not doing it for the money. They could go and work at Sainsbury's and earn more and have an easier life. They are doing it because they genuinely care. So I think, for me, when I'm looking at franchisees as well, I'm looking at people that are coming in because of that reason. We say no quite a lot, actually, to franchisees, because I think what I'm looking for are people with the same value set, and they must have the integrity at the heart of everything, and it must be about the end user and the carer, and if it's not, and if it's just not, it's not the right vision for what we're trying to achieve at Walfinch.
So In my research, I've come across something called the mum test that Walfinch and you mentioned. So tell us a little bit about the mum test.
Yeah, when I was a sort of single provider, that was something I used to talk to myself about all the time, and it's something that I've really woven into Walfinch, thinking, well, okay, when you're hiring a carer, would it be okay for you to have that carer go to your mum? And that's it. I think that really answers all questions. Are they the right person? Do they fit right? Can they communicate well? Are they nice? All of that. And actually, you can sort of flip it really and think about the same thing with service users, and thinking, well, okay, would I allow my mum to go and provide care for this person? And so it's also thinking about that and thinking, well, I'm very much about the right people and having the right sort of ethics around us all the time. And so I think a lot of providers don't necessarily think about that, and it's very much about, it's a numbers thing. But I think if we can build something with just lovely care staff, wonderful clients, you create a hub that naturally wants retention, and it naturally attracts more, essentially. So yeah, the mum test is very personal to me. My parents fortunately are not at that stage right now, but I'd love to think that when they are, I could comfortably send in any Walfinch member anywhere around the country and be comfortable about that decision.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's a really nice way to look at it. And I agree with you totally about having the right people around you, because we spend so much time, in work and working. If you've got people that you don't get on with, they're not nice, maybe. They might be efficient at their job, but they're not nice. Doesn't mean it's a great environment to work in, does it? So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important and really interesting to hear that from you. So, the future for Walfinch then, what's kind of the plans? Actually, before you go into that, how many franchisees do you have right now?
So I think we have about 28 locations, and two of those are company owned, and the rest all franchised. The plan is sensible growth. We've had a lot of people that are interested in a Walfinch franchise, and as I sort of said earlier, that we're very selective about that. So what do we look for? We look for people that are, as I said, top of the agenda. Are they nice people? Can we, mix with them? Because for me, it's a 10-year relationship. Is what I'm looking at. It's not about a check today. It's about the emotional bank account throughout that whole time. All that sort of Dale Carnegie stuff, and. The second of all, I'm really interested in people with management experience, because I think it is very much a management franchise, with people that are good leaders make great care providers. So I think that's really quite important. And the rest of it's all, obviously the usual, the finance and the sort of communication and the understanding and so on. But I think really the real chemistry piece and the management bit are really quite important. And the chemistry bit really also encompasses the why. Why does somebody want to buy a franchise? Is it purely because they want to, make lots of money in a business, or is it because they genuinely want to make a difference and want a change in their lives and doing something fulfilling and for the society? Yes, it's profit motivated, but it's for the greater good. I mean, that's the sort of people that we're looking for.
Yeah, the finances allow that why to happen, right? So it's important for everyone. So
absolutely,
yeah, makes sense.
You can't take your carers out for that, Christmas lunch and all of that kind of thing if there's no meat on the bone. So all of those things are important, and it's about sharing it out really.
And sorry, I interrupted you when you were sort of talking about the kind of future growth plans. So sensible growth rate, you said. What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of focus on taking on sort of 7 to 10 franchises per year. Means that we can really kind of structure the growth. But I suppose with the team that we've got right now, that may look differently, because we've got just so many people that have worked with businesses with over 200 locations and so on. So I suppose my long-term aspiration is 200 locations around the UK, 70% of those being outstanding rated by CQC, and I imagine over the next few years we'll start dabbling in the international franchising markets. I think one of the reasons I'm really interested in learning about franchising is in order to be a career franchisor. I'm here on a 20-30 year journey myself, and I really want to kind of make Walfinch a name that everybody knows everywhere, and I think our message and our ethos is something that deserves to be distributed everywhere.
Fantastic, really good stuff. So I'm going to start wrapping up the conversation now, but I've got 3 more questions for you, Amrit, and the first one is, do you have any funny, strange or weird stories from your career that you're happy to share?
So I've got a bit of a funny and weird story. So I have my PA who sometimes comes to the UK but is based in South Africa. So she's really a virtual assistant most of the time. A wonderful girl, Anine. And when she first started with me, I had this networking dinner that I was going to, and I was supposed to have taken a gift for somebody because it was their birthday. And I, of course, forgot this because I was late and, putting kids down to bed and getting into the cab, and off me and my wife go. So we're at this restaurant, which was like in a hotel bar thing. And I'm like, my God, I can't believe this. So I phoned her up and I was like, is there any way that you can get this thing here? And she's in South Africa, bear in mind. And my house is in London. And and she's like, right, okay, leave this with me. So she contacts the babysitter, finds some courier guy.
Wow.
To go to my house, gets a photo of, this item, which was like in a bag, in a drawer and so on, working with the babysitter, get that, in this courier. The courier guy comes into the hotel, finds a guy with my description, and I was like, oh, is this bag for you? And I was like, yeah, thank you. But so behind the scenes, she's like frantically sorting this thing out. And I was like, yeah, wonderful. So yeah, I suppose that's a quirky one, but also the benefit of a phenomenal team, really, that really go above and beyond. So
yeah, like, for most people, where would you start with that?
Honestly, I couldn't do it, so I have no idea. I wouldn't even know what to Google for that, So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great. Like you say, highlighting again the importance of having the right people around you who'll go to those lengths
make it happen. Yeah,
yeah, it's awesome.
Crikey.
Cool. So my second question then is, what's been the proudest or most inspiring moment of your career?
I suppose actually that first franchise, and signing that first franchise when our first franchisee, Sarah Wickham, I think that was probably one of the proudest moments I've had that just immediately spring to mind, because I had so much time and emotion invested in getting there that when she sort of signed on that dotted line and believed, so did I, and I just knew at that point that was it. We're gonna blast through this and we're gonna do it. And wonderful to see her success. I mean, she's been one of our biggest franchisees from the get go, and just listened to the model and system and just done it. And so I feel almost emotional now thinking about it for her and for me, because we were there together, believing in each other and thinking, right, we're going to do this, and here we are. So. Taking
a risk together, I guess.
Because, absolutely.
Yeah. You never know. But like you say, having somebody who believes in what you're doing, I think it's a big emotional thing, and it's a big driver to make sure success happens, isn't it? So really interesting dynamic, that first franchisee for franchisor and the franchisee, I guess. So
absolutely.
it's great to hear it's worked out, and you know you're doing well. You've got up to 28 locations now, so yeah, awesome. Brilliant. So final question then, and that is, if you're speaking to somebody who's thinking about investing in a franchise, whether it's a Walfinch one or any other, what one piece of advice would you give to them?
I think one of the things I always say to all franchisees that come to meet me is, you know, speak to everyone and see who you have the chemistry with. Because what you want is somebody that on a Friday night, when you are really in trouble, you can pick up the phone to and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do I do? And if you're not comfortable enough to think I could do that, it's probably not the right brand for you. And I think that's it. You know, it all comes down to chemistry, because the rest of it's all white noise. It's a long-term relationship. It's really, the next longest relationship I'd hope to a marriage. Really, I mean, it's a huge commitment from both parties. So I think the chemistry is just the most important thing.
Awesome. Really good advice. Amrit, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and getting to know your journey and where Walfinch is nowadays. So, thank you for that, and take care.
Thank you. Love to speak to you. Bye-bye.